Welcome to a special Talking Royals Q&A episode, because lots has been happening this week and we get loads of questions on the topic of Andrew Mountbatten-Windsor. So we've decided to go through them, choose like our top 5 or so, and get these two, Chris and Lizzie, to answer them for you. So question number 1, is Andrew still in line of succession to the throne?
He is, yeah. He remains 8th in line to the throne. He last year, when he lost all his titles, had Prince removed, Duke of York removed, became known as Andrew Mountbatten-Windsor, agreed to give up Royal Lodge. One of the things he did retain was that line of succession, and it has caused a lot of questions recently. Why is he still in the line of succession? Why can't they just boot him out? It's a bit more complicated than that. It does require an act of parliament. It also requires the other Commonwealth realms to agree to it as well.
And I think possibly, Chris, what people misunderstand is that people assume that the king can just do what he wants and get things done as he'd like to get them done without any consultation whatsoever. Because perhaps, we've all been learning about Henry VIII and all of that stuff, and we assume that's just what they do. They do whatever they want. But it's just
this is not an absolute monarchy. Therefore, you have to go through procedures. And, for example, with getting rid of, Lord Malleson's Lord title, you can't just decide to do it. You have to go through, the parliamentary procedures. So, so in terms of the line of succession, king, obviously, then it's William, followed by George, Charlotte, Louis. Then, of course, it's Harry, followed by his two children, Archie and Lilibet. Then it's Andrew. So Lizzie says number 8, but there's no real way of getting rid of that. Now, we actually asked this question of the palace at the time when everything else was stripped away. And I think their response went something along the lines of, well, in the unlikely event that all the other 7 people would all die at once, then it just, it's inconceivable to think that the country would want him to be king, and therefore it just wouldn't happen.
Yeah.
I kind of think that's what their answer was. But
so it is possible to sort of leapfrog number 8.
Well,
and go to number 9.
I suppose he'd have to abdicate or something, wouldn't it? Like you'd like Edward the 8th did in 1936. You'd have to say, well, I don't want it. I'm going to pass it down to his oldest daughter, which is Beatrice. So that's a long answer to the question. Yes, he's still in the line of succession, but do we think it really matters, given that there are 7 people ahead of him who will have to die at the same time?
Yeah, which we obviously,
We don't see that happen.
No. Okay, I'm going to go on to question 2. How does he pay for his lifestyle? Because we've talked about
now that's
pocket
a very
money.
good question.
We've talked about pocket money. We've talked about his brother giving him pocket money, essentially. But that doesn't fund his whole lifestyle, does it? So does he work a job that we don't know about?
Not that we're aware of. He does get a small pension from the Navy, but we do know that the king will privately fund the new house in Sandringham Marsh Farm. He's now moved to the Sandringham estate, hasn't he? He's currently living at Wood Farm, but he will move to Marsh Farm, which will become his principal residence. But yes, the king is privately funding that.
But we just simply don't know. I suppose one of the things that we learned in the Epstein files was about, how, for example, did Sarah Ferguson manage to afford flights across the Atlantic to go and see Jeffrey Epstein? Well, we now know from the emails that it looks like he paid for them, or at least that's what the email seemed to suggest. So, we don't know where Andrew's money comes from.
Okay.
And for all we know, his mother, Queen Elizabeth, could have given him a very large pot of money. She could have said to him, look, I don't think your brother's going to look after you very well when he's king. So while I'm queen, here's a big pot of money for you. That's your kind of nest egg. And I'm not saying this did happen, but that could have happened, because don't forget the monarch always has a private income stream from the Duchy of Lancaster. And then the sovereign grant is what pays for all the public stuff, the palaces and the visits and the engagements and the trips. But they do have that private income stream, and they can do whatever they like with that money. And therefore, Queen Elizabeth II could have given Andrew a lot of.
It was one of the questions when Andrew was living at Royal Lodge? How is he funding that? Royal Lodge sits outside the sort of the security bubble of Windsor Castle. So it was requiring its own security that Andrew was having to pay for. The King stopped paying for that in a bid to get him to move out of Royal Lodge. He also had to pay for he was supposed to pay for the upkeep and maintenance of Royal Lodge. Now, we've subsequently found out that Royal Lodge hasn't been maintained as well as it should have been, but there were a lot of costs involved, and there were questions about how Andrew was affording to do all of that.
Right, we've got another one here. Have British police ever looked into Andrew Mountbatten-Windsor, Chris?
The answer is yes. They have, several times. So if you think about the allegation that the late Virginia Giuffre made, which was that she was trafficked to London and she was forced to have sex with him in the apartment of Ghislaine Maxwell in 2001, the Metropolitan Police have looked into those claims. In fact, they've done it several times. They've looked into it in 2015, I think, for the first time. And then when Virginia Giuffre launched her civil action, when she was suing Prince Andrew, as he was then, they looked into it again, and when some of the Epstein files came up, they reviewed their previous decision, So we've got to the point where the Metropolitan Police have looked many times at the allegation that Virginia Giuffre made, that Prince Andrew himself always strenuously denied, said he'd never met her, and they've always come to the same conclusion. We don't think that there is any criminality that we should be concerned about, and actually if there was any, for example, underage sex, it didn't happen within the UK or within the London Police's jurisdiction. So that's they've done it many times.
Okay.
But there is a current an inquiry by the Thames Valley Police. They're looking into this most recent claim that a second victim, survivor of Jeffrey Epstein, has made, that she was trafficked to have sex with Prince Andrew in Windsor. So that's why it's Thames Valley Police looking at that one, because that's where Windsor is in Berkshire.
Yes.
But that's not yet at an investigation stage. That's only looking into these allegations that have been made, which Prince Andrew has always strenuously denied.
Yes. I'm going to aim this one at you first, Lizzie. Question 4. Do we know what the royal family think about what's happening with the former Prince Andrew?
Yeah, we know that the royal family think that Andrew Mountbatten-Windsor made grave errors of judgment in his friendship with Jeffrey Epstein. We heard from the King, didn't we, at the end of last year when he stripped his brother of almost everything and forced him to move out of Royal Lodge. And they said in that statement they released at the time that the thoughts of the King and Queen are with and remain with the victims of Jeffrey Epstein. Now, do we know what the late Queen thought? With the late Queen, I think on so many things we knew much less of what she actually thought. In 2019, when Andrew stepped back from public duties, that was a statement that he put out himself. In 2022, when he was stripped of military affiliations and patronages, that was a statement from Buckingham Palace saying that it was done with the Queen's approval. We know, though, that she continued to support her son publicly. She was seen, soon after the disastrous Newsnight interview, out riding with her son. Now, it's less what she said and more what she did, right? And those
think about the Prince Philip, remembrance service at Westminster
That was
Abbey.
the other example I was going to give.
Who did she choose
to support her then? It was the then Prince Andrew. And those things are symbolic, aren't they? She's choosing to have him by her side and be publicly seen, photographed, television images of those moments. So, yeah, she didn't talk about it, but we should know that she did support him because of those images.
I think certainly, it's not necessarily our job to guess what they're thinking privately. But, I was just saying to you in the news studio the other night, when you think of Queen Camilla and everything that she's done through her charities to support women and the survivors of domestic abuse, and, to support the victims of violence against women and girls, of course, she's going to be absolutely appalled by all of this. So, it's very, very difficult. It must be so difficult for her not to be able to sort of express that publicly. I think so. I'm just going to point you to the facts. Look at all the work that she does with victims, and there are, when it comes to Jeffrey Epstein, there are many, many victims, and therefore I think that's the best we can say. I think the other thing, sort of privately, we know that William really, really is angry with his uncle, and just in the same way that Andrew's getting sort of less support, if you like, from his brother than he used to have from his mother, it's entirely possible that when Prince William is King William, there'll be even less support available for
Well, yeah,
Uncle
there's a
Andrew.
whole layer yet to go. Right, question 5, final question. Will the man formerly known as Prince Andrew ever have to testify?
Unlikely that he'll have to testify. I mean,
there's no way to force him to testify.
I mean, short of arresting him, under some extradition treaty between the US and the UK, I can't see it happening. I don't see him going to the United States voluntarily at any point. Although we know that Keir Starmer, the Prime Minister, has said many times that if someone's got some information which could be helpful to those investigating the crimes of Jeffrey Epstein, they should give that evidence.
What the Clintons have decided to do.
Which the Clintons have decided to do. But I think Andrew, and we have to listen to what he said in that Newsnight interview, and he did say he didn't see anything that made him suspicious. He wasn't aware of anything going on. So therefore, I can't see how that's going to happen, and that will be a real disappointment to all the victims. In fact, I was listening to a victim on a survivor on the radio the other day who was saying, look, in terms of the Prime Minister, when he made that very fulsome apology about everything that he did to appoint Lord Mandelson as the American ambassador. We do have to sort of welcome that apology. He has said, I'm really sorry that I made this mistake. Whether we are going to get Andrew apologising for the mistakes that he made, and again, we're not talking about any evidence of criminality here, and he's never been convicted of any wrongdoing. But, I think all the victims want is some acknowledgement that they did suffer. But as for testifying, can't see it ever happening.
Yeah, it would have to... Andrew would have to do so willingly, and there have been a lot of calls for that, and some have said that is a matter for his conscience.
Well, we'll see what happens. A week is long in the life of the royal.
Well, a lot happened in 1 week in the royal family, so a lot can happen more. And again, as you have said in the podcast last week, didn't you? There are 3 million files here. New ones are coming up all the time. Okay, they've been coming every day this week, but who knows if someone's going to find something in a week's time or 2 weeks' time.
And it's something that's uncontrollable where the royal family is concerned.
Yes.
This is a situation that no PR executive can foresee or try to stop. It is what it is.
Correct.
Right, it's important, and I know that Chris said it a little bit earlier, but I'll say it again, that Andrew Mountbatten-Windsor denies all allegations of wrongdoing, and the fact that he's included in the Epstein files is not an indication of guilt. But that's all for now. We'd love if you could subscribe to our YouTube channel. And don't forget, we'll be back on Friday with our regular episode. So we'll see you then.